tolerators. This is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with Natalie, the show where my guest and I chat about how the patriarchy makes it impossible to bounce back from things that a lot of people go through. We know our guest today. Julia is the host of Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous and is the other half of our spin-off live stream, Still Comfy. Jules, are you ready to dive into the realities of being a young, single mom?
Yes.
Yes, Natalie. Yes, I am.
Yes, I am.
It's
Let's
like
do this.
It's like it's the Deb Heard trial all over again. Yes, I can confirm.
Yes, Your Honor. I will swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I can, in fact, confirm that I am a young single mom.
Yes, I can confirm. Mm-hmm. Yes, that is true.
If you haven't been listening to our live stream, Still Comfy, well, I guess that's fine. But you have been getting little tiny hints of Jules and her journey with motherhood and just like little tiny tidbits that make you go, there's more of a story there. I just know it. She didn't have it as easy as Karen on the river court in Tree Hill.
Right? Oh my God, Karen! That's the dream.
Like Lorelai Gilmore, also a myth.
Also, 100%, still wealthy. I don't care what you say.
Because your podcast deals with the media and pop culture, and I think you and I are going to do an episode on how they portray single moms. Against how they portray single women who choose to not have children in the media, and we'll just do some case studies.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, number one, every single mom who is really frazzled but somehow striving is a white lady.
Where 100%.
Yeah. Where
sorry, go ahead.
And audience, I don't know, because I guess you're not watching Still Comfy or you're new and you haven't listened to her musician episode, but Jules is not a white lady.
No, but I was raised by one.
So. Yeah, well.
Which I thought was interesting on Pod Meets World when Ryder Strong made the comment about how, remember when Italians weren't considered white? And I was like, I do, Ryder Strong. I do really and truly do.
Yeah. Do you know how confused I get that Italians are considered white? Like,
you're talking. Listen, okay, so for people who may not know, my dad's black, my mom's Italian. So, like, when I would say I'm black and Italian, people would be like, whatever. And then now, fast forward, I'm 38, soon to be 39. Fast forward, and people are like, so just you're black and white. My grandfather would roll over in his grave if you called him white.
I would just like to know who got to make that call. Was it the president of Italy?
I don't know.
I bet you it was Queen Elizabeth and her fucking colonizing ass.
Probably.
Rest in peace.
But my mother is very pale. I will not deny that. People look at her and like, you're not Italian. And I'm just like, don't tell her that. I'm going to have to listen to it in the car ride home.
Does she have the beautiful dark Italian hair?
She did, yeah.
Okay. Very
thick, coarse hair. It was gorgeous.
Yeah. Does she get olive in the summer like I do? I'm not Italian tolerators. You know it. I'm Croatian, but I get very olive.
No, she will burn.
Oh.
It's probably the type of Italian she is the reason why Italians are not considered white.
Well, way to go, Jules's mom.
Yeah.
Getting the rest of them some privilege.
Yeah. We're all just eking, trying to squeak by to get up that privilege ladder.
Because, by the way, I feel like if someone like immigrated over here with a really thick Italian accent, number one, some ignorant person would assume that they were from Mexico or something, and then that person would be denied white privilege.
Honestly, people think that my mom's side of the family, they're always like, I don't understand why would you pronounce the L's in your last name? It's because they're not from Mexico. It's not Spanish. It's Italian. And we actually think this is the best part because I have some very conservative cousins on that side. We can't find any record of my grandfather and great-grandfather and great-grandmother coming to the States. No record.
Just no record?
So So, because my mom's like, oh, it's so interesting that they weren't forced to change their last name. Because a lot of Italians were, right? Because we
Mm-hmm.
like to use extra letters. And I was like, that is interesting. So she's digging and digging and digging and can't find any record. And I was like, Mom, you know what that means? That means they straight up smuggled into this country.
Yeah.
We are products of, quote, illegal immigration, end quote.
We can't go to Ellis Island and find your relatives on the ledger.
Nothing. There's nothing.
There's nothing.
There's nothing. I'm like, this is so much fun. So then when my cousin was like railing about, I mean, she literally uses that term. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, you realize that your auntie cannot find any record of our grandfather coming to this country.
Right. He snuck his way in.
That was like the best feeling to
Yeah.
say that out loud to somebody who is so mad about immigration. It's like, fuck you.
Well, now that we've established for everyone that you're not white.
Which is so funny because normally people want to talk to me about being black. So like, here I am just waving my Italian flag.
Number one, not that I have done any like actual data points on this, but when I look through our catalog of episodes here on Team Tolerator, I do notice that I lean towards a very non-white, non-straight guest base.
Hey, that's not a bad thing.
And so, like, I feel like I've never had to establish before, like, hey, the person on the end of this interview, not white. Just not white. Just so everyone was aware, intersectional feminist icon, Natalie Katona. I've done it. I fixed the problem.
I love it. We're here for it.
But let's talk about where it all began with your motherhood. Do you want to throw it back to what we talked about in your last episode? No.
Wait, what did I talk about my last episode? Musicians.
Yeah, oh no, I guess we talked about blame and shame. Time is a construct that has no meaning.
My debut on the show.
Your debut.
Talked about musicians. My child's father is a musician.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so cute.
They all are.
And it was interesting because, so I've had 20 years to reflect, right? Well, not really 20, but 18.
Yeah.
And so I was like, in hindsight, I don't think he ever wanted the same thing I wanted, which I wish we had better conversations with women in general about like, hey, and you know, even though I hate the whole he's just not that into you, there's some validity in that concept. But we weren't.
Is it the like if he wanted to, he would theory where it's like that's how I've cut out like half of my friends where I'm like, if you wanted to, you would.
Yeah, same. Like I started applying that to dating, and then I also started applying it to friendship about 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, we weren't together. We were just friends hanging out. We did try to date a little bit pre-baby. And it just, you know, it was felt forced.
Yeah.
And then I was supposed to move to Seattle, and I had quit my job. I had secured a place to live. I had secured a cell phone with a Seattle phone number because these were the days where you couldn't transfer your phone, right? Like you had to get a new. Did all those things, went to, my last day of work because I had quit 6-ish weeks before. Not quite. Yeah, about 6 weeks before I was going to move, because then I was going to pack and do all the things and like my farewell tour, right? And I went to Sacramento to celebrate. Celebrated a little too hard, and 6 weeks later found out I was pregnant. But in that time frame, I went from being 19 years old to 20 years old. So like,
and full ass moving across the country.
And so when I found out 2 weeks before I was supposed to move. So I was in the throes of, you know, really no job. And just so everyone understands, like that Italian grandfather had left us, all of us grandchildren, some money. So that was the money I was going to use to relocate because he had passed away the year prior. So I was going to use that money to relocate and, you know, start my life anew because fuck the town I lived in. I hate it here. Blah, blah, blah. Give me culture. And my siblings were in Seattle. So it just made sense because then I wouldn't be going to a strange city alone. And my parents are strangely protective in the weirdest way about their youngest child, probably because I wasn't supposed to exist. This is 100% what happens when accidents happen. Um, and yeah, it
Yeah.
just turned into a complete and total shit show after that. Like,
Okay, well, let's talk about the non-move to Seattle.
mm,
So technically, you would have been moving to where you would have had a built-in support system ish, like an adjacent support
yeah,
system.
I mean, this is, yeah, my sister and I were definitely close at the time.
Yeah.
So that would have been, mhm.
So did you feel like now because a man was involved that like did any part of you were you like, well, it'll be easier for him to be involved in this baby if we're in the same state?
You know what's interesting? When I was on my walk today, I was thinking about it. I was thinking about how I never considered him in any of the decision making.
I
Like,
love that.
my reason for not moving has nothing to do with him. It had everything to do with my parents
Mm-hmm.
and this sort of subtlety of like, well, you can't really do it alone. You're going to need help.
Um,
This is going to be really hard. Kids are really hard to raise. And sure, all of that is true, but if you go in with a negative expectation, what the fuck do you think is going to happen?
right.
And if it hadn't been for a friend, the friend who had been seeing him behind my back when we found out I was pregnant, but I didn't know it at the time.
Right.
um, so he and I were being intimate while they were dating, but whatever. If it hadn't been for her, I would have found out in Seattle
Mm-hmm.
because we were at her house one night and she was like, her mom made popcorn every night before bed. And I didn't like popcorn. I hated it. I hate the kernels in my teeth. Like, it's a thing. And I was like, man, that popcorn smells hella good. And she literally doesn't skip a beat and goes, when's the last time you had a period? I don't know why you would ask that question. I just thought that your mom's popcorn smelled good. She's like, you don't like popcorn. And her sister also had a baby at 20. So
Yeah.
this isn't her first rodeo. And so we drove to Walmart, bought 8 pregnancy tests. All 8 of them came back positive.
I love the number 8.
Well, because
Like,
you always hear about these false
yeah.
positives, right? So
Yeah. Man, I do love that you didn't consider him at all because I think that's like my go-to, especially with the like he's just not that into you and it's like, well now you have to be into me. I'm
mhm.
growing your baby.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, and that was a lot of people were pushing that narrative too. Like, I was like, what, however, this classic scenario that you see in movies, however involved you want to be.
is
And then
how
these women
involved
are
you can
super
be.
emotional and can't hang. And then the dude comes and saves the day. That's not my life.
Mm-hmm.
I literally was like, however involved you want to be. And he's like, I'm going to be completely involved. Cool. Don't tell me shit you're not going to stick up to because I come from the men in my life at this point, my father, my grandfathers, my brother, keep their word. So that's
Yeah.
my experience. That's my experience in this situation. So you're telling me that you're going to be around and be available and be a part of this pregnancy, and then you're not. So now I'm like, well, fuck you. You left
Mm-hmm.
me high and dry pregnant. Like, go away. I'm not a fan.
Go away. Um, because I think because for one thing, like I know women who are no longer attached to men that they had children with in a
Mm-hmm.
romantic way, but still somehow end up in these positions where if he's making a life move or if he's decided that wherever they've settled down is where they will settle down, then they too are also trapped there.
Right. Right. I have a family member who's in that situation actually. What's interesting is that family member's mother kind of was my leading example of like, you don't have to consider the guy because when my aunt got pregnant in 87, she stayed in Connecticut through her pregnancy and then moved out here a few years later, gave my cousin her last name. My son has my
Mm-hmm.
last name, and just raised my cousin all not all on her own because my grandparents were here and my dad was here, but the point is the same. Like, he wasn't a consideration in the whole raising of the child. So I think early on, like, that being my example, it was kind of like, well, I don't really need you because my
Right.
auntie did it, so I can do it too. But I don't think I was conscious of that at the time. Like, now 20 years later, I can see the influence of walking into being like, I can do this.
I can do this. Because not a lot of people have that like instant, like it's a panic on both parties. Like, well, what are you going
Hmm.
to do? Well, what are you going to do? And
And
neither
I
of
think,
us have money.
yeah, and I think at the time, because I was still so heavily influenced by religion, like even though I
Hmm.
had left the church, I still had a lot of like, I hadn't deprogrammed fully yet. I'm still deprogramming, but when in terms of coming to like women's choice, I
Hmm.
think if it had been 10 years in the future, in that scenario, I don't think I would have a child.
Yeah. I think what ends up happening is when I was very young and still like one toe in the church, one entire foot in my whole ass spiritual identity that had nothing to
Hmm.
do with Christianity, like my go to line was like, well, I believe in other women's right to choose, but
Hmm.
like that's their business.
Yeah,
I'm
totally
over
said the same
here.
line.
Yeah. I'm over here and if I get knocked up, I'm getting knocked up. Like uh
Yeah.
I mean my mom and aunt even it was when my mom was like, I'm confused as to why you and boy I was dating are using condoms, you're on the pill. And I was like, well, mother,
Safety never takes a holiday.
well, hot mom. Like sometimes here's a falsehood in protection to begin with. And she's
Right.
like, and then she like told me something completely off the wall and was like, I mean, you're about to graduate college. It's not like a baby would be that big of a deal.
Wow. I still think 22 is too young.
Yes. My parents had me their first year of marriage. So it was 23, 24. And then
Dang.
my sister came 17 months after.
Yeah. That's wild. Like I can't, I don't know. It's 22 is so young. Like your brain's still not fully developed,
Right.
That frontal cortex or whatever is the final part to solidify doesn't even happen yet?
Oh, tell me, what's it like having an infant when your brain isn't fully fused yet?
Oh my God. Again, on my walk today, I was thinking about it because, my child's in college now. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, man, I was growing up as he was growing up. And there's a lot of shit that I wish that I could go back and not fix per se, but I know better now. But I didn't know better back then because I was 21 and dumb.
Yeah.
And I'd gone through babysitting courses and I'd done all the fucking marriage and family shit in school. Like it wasn't like I was coming into motherhood completely blind, but I had no life experience. I had no employable skills. I had dropped out of junior college, not even college. I dropped out of junior college that like I did 1 year of junior college and I was like, this is like fucking high school. Why am I here? And then I never went back the next year.
You're like, done. I
This
don't
is
need your
dumb.
credits.
Yeah, like you're not challenging me. Like I read all this shit in AP. Well, I didn't take AP English, but I read all this shit in like advanced classes in English class. Like, why am I reading it again? It was just like this is insulting. This is
My
insulting to me. And no discredit to junior college for
no.
people who thrive there, but like I needed to be challenged, and Modesto wasn't doing that for me in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I didn't go to junior college, but my favorite part of college was being the smartest person in the room because I had already read the book. And I'm like, oh, this is just
Yeah.
a repeat for me.
Yeah, when I did finally go back to junior college as a stepping stone to get into a 4 year, it was like even every class, every
Yeah.
literature class, I was like, how have you never read this book before? Like, what am I doing?
One time
Oh, I
I
have to
had,
play the game. That's
yeah,
all I'm doing
oh, play the
here.
game. Tens of thousands of dollars in debt for a game.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't I just put my inheritance for my grandfather on black? Like,
Honestly, Natalie, that is my biggest regret at that time period. When I got the money, I wish that I was in a place with my parents where they could have said, you need to invest this money and then like
mm-hmm.
scrolled it away.
Yeah.
Because that was, I mean, I started parenting in the red. I had credit card debt.
Mm-hmm.
I had like no employable skills whatsoever. Like you want to talk about the stereotypes that people refer to when it comes to being a non-white mom getting pregnant super young. Like
Mm-hmm.
I fit the bill
Like,
100%.
well, and here's it too, like, and I didn't like get a large inheritance. Like, grandfather died, and like there was money to be had and I got a little bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
But my whole thing was, number one, I don't even remember what the number was. And number two, it was gone my first year out of college. And I wasn't even living on my own. I'm just
Yeah.
sitting at my dad's house, buying boys who don't love me dinner and buying people presents and like funding bachelorette parties for people I'm not friends with anymore. Like, it just goes because you're like, I got it. It was free money. But again, if someone had been like, and we're going to put those right here and accumulate wealth like white men.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't understand why well, yes, I do know why the legal age is 18 because thank you, Vietnam. But at that point, there should still be some sort of bridge period where your parents can still intervene in some way until you're 21, because I really think that if my parents still had some sort of like, if I wasn't legally an adult, my parents would have been able to be like, we're putting, and I really think my mom would have, but she was fighting against the whole, my attitude with, well, I'm a legal adult. I'm an adult. I'm an adult. First of all, motherfucker, nobody calls themselves an adult at 18. Like, adults don't refer to themselves as adults.
No.
Like, or even grown-ups. Like, it just doesn't happen.
Well, and here's the thing. I wouldn't have known there was money until I was handed money because I graduated college. Like, I guess my dad decided that the responsible thing to do was to hold on to it until I was quote unquote grown and out of college.
Yeah.
Maybe he would have never have given it to me if I didn't get a degree. Thanks, teaching degree that does nothing for me. Yeah. And so, like, he hands me this money. I've got a job at, like, J.C. Penney's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I graduated into a recession.
Right.
There were no jobs. And so I'm, like, in J.C. Penney's with, like, this check. And, like, Natalie likes to go out.
Yeah. So does Julia.
And you literally just have play money. So I'm like, player's gonna play. Oh, no. Yeah. Buying meals for men who don't love me. Making him split my Olive Garden. He knows who he is. Yeah. Don't worry, baby. I got it.
Yeah.
We can split this Panera. The sandwiches are too big anyways. Oh my God. So before you were a single mom, because like we all grew up with an adjacent young single mother in our lives. Like I had a cousin and my dad had to lock us into a bedroom and explain to my sister and I why my cousin had ruined her life and like possibly our lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
we had to be careful.
Right. We had to have like, I was 10 and we had to have like a sit down discussion. Like, hey, your cousin has fallen pregnant. I was like, oh, a baby. And my dad went, no. Nope. No.
This is not a thing you will be excited about.
And like my mom's never smoked a day in her life, but in my head, like hot mom is chain smoking, just like Grandma Peg at the window trying to disassociate. Like, well, my dad tells us like why ending up being a single mom was like literally a fate worse than death. Like, yeah. So what were your views on young single women who quote unquote fall pregnant?
You know, it's so interesting because I was so young when my aunt came back to California with a baby, single, that it was just normal.
Really?
Yeah. And then like but then in the context of religion, the church we went to, I mean, it was like how she has ruined her life.
Her life! Impossibly ours.
Does she know how hard this is how no man's gonna love her now kind of shit. And then too, pop culture doesn't always do a great job with the representation of single moms either. You've heard me talk about that. Well, when I was on Paige's podcast, I was telling her, I said, the thing that bothers me about the pop culture representation is that it blames the mom still, but really it's the system. The system makes it really hard to be a single parent, period.
It makes it hard to be a parent.
Yeah. Right. And so it wasn't easy. My aunt didn't have a lot of money, but we had more things at her house than we did at, like we went went to McDonald's all the time.
Yeah. Love
And
it.
we went to the movies all the time.
Uh-huh.
So it didn't feel like she was a sad, broke lady. She took us to the salon to get our hair done from time. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't like I didn't feel like when I spent summers with her, my cousin had a freaking playroom. She had
Mm-hmm.
every goddamn Barbie you could imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in my mind, they were living so much larger than what I was allowed to live. And I equated that to, well, there's more of us in the house, so there's probably less to go around.
Yeah.
As opposed to, it turns out my aunt was just probably accumulating a shit ton of credit card debt.
Like we all are, 2022.
Yeah.
So on my side of the fence, because like there was single moms who had become pregnant young that I was related to, but then there were the girls in my high school who would, you know, some guy would impregnate them because I like to place the blame on them. Like some
Yeah,
guy impregnated them.
Yeah, they cannot ejaculate.
They could. They could just really squeeze their eyes tight
Squeeze
and,
them real tight.
and think of dead grandma or something, whatever they got to do to make themselves last longer so we don't make fun of them. Like, so they don't kill us. Like, like literally, like you could be
Honestly, it is
healthy.
a death machine anyway, because thanks for the HPV that's going to give me cervical cancer that I won't know about because it's slowly killing my body. Sorry, was that
Correct.
too much?
Listen, I get a pap smear every year and no one tells me anything about it. So I'm just like, I guess I'm good.
Yeah,
Do
they
I
would call
ask?
you.
Do I know?
No, they'd call you. They would call you and be like, "This is unusual. You need to come in.
You need to do it again." So then there were the women who were young mothers in my school. And there was just like this aura of like sad shame where like we're shaming them with our sadness because we feel so bad for them.
We had, you know what? Now that we're talking about this, we had a gal. So cruising is a huge thing in Modesto when I was growing up because George Lucas is from here, American Graffiti, yada yada. We've had this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so before cruising, was it out? Whatever. Cruising technically is outlawed.
Yeah.
But we did it a lot in high school. So this girl that we grew up with gets pregnant and is gonna get married. And I said, we're at my godmom's house having a conversation. They're talking about it, right? And I was like, why would she get married? I said, if that were me, I'd want to get married after the baby was born because I don't want to be pregnant in a wedding dress. And they were both like, Julia Marie, you will not have a baby out of wedlock.
Oh, okay.
Guess what I did?
Watch me. I love it. Like, I love just like petty going, watch me do it though.
I was like, I had to, okay, so she was friends with my sister and I think she was 20. So I had to have been 15.
Yeah.
Or 14.
But so
but still,
like I had girls my age who had
explain
babies.
to me why it's bad out of wedlock. That's what I need. Don't tell me not to do it. Explain to me why you think it's bad out of wedlock.
Yeah. And, girls get pregnant, men impregnate us because they refuse to like squint at their eyes real hard and withhold their orgasm because they're selfish.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't even like we were sad, like the children who were also like adjacent to these other children raising children, because like, man, I'd go out with those girls. I'd be like, what are we doing today with this baby? Bam, 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 bam. Pushing strollers, feeding the baby nuggets from our fast food job. Like, what are we doing with these kids? Like, oh, I get a free ice cream cone because the baby's getting a free ice cream cone? Tits.
Yeah.
Taking the baby to the bookstore. Like, the girls still got to go out and like hang and have a good time. But like, when you were like in midst of like people's parents or teachers or anything, then it would just be like, it's just such a shame.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it happened and you keep ripping away our abortion rights. So
yeah. Two things. One, you make a really good point about how we phrase the result, the arrival of a pregnancy.
Right.
Right. the girl gets
pregnant. Like, we
It's
asked for
never,
it.
yeah, like we intentionally were like, how can I get pregnant today? Right? Where as opposed to being impregnated,
Yeah.
right? So it immediately shifts the blame to the woman that she wasn't taking care of herself to not
Correct.
get pregnant, even though we don't have sex ed anywhere.
At all.
Two, there was a book that my mom's friend wrote. She's actually a pretty successful author in the Christian world, and it was called Just Like Ice Cream. And I remember being, it must have been when I was like in 8th grade. My mom gives me this book to read. And it's about this girl who goes and out with this guy, and she tells her parents she's going to get ice cream, but really they go and have sex. And then she ends up being pregnant in high school. Does she give the baby up for adoption?
Does she name the baby Ice Cream?
No, but I think she gives up the baby for adoption. But everyone's treating her like a pariah because she's pregnant in high school and all these things. And I feel like that was my mother's subtle way of being like, you don't want to be. And the girl's name in the book is Julie, which is what my family called me at that time. And I was like, I don't know how to interpret this.
I don't know how to interpret this. Well, but then like the single young mother who was, well, I guess she wasn't single when I was a kid. I don't know. The loser hung around and they had more kids. But like whenever we talked about her when she wasn't in the room, it was always like, and you know, they're having just a real rough go. And then like my sister and I would be side-eyed. Like, do you hear us? It's a real rough go. They're not having fun. Even though one of them had one orgasm after prom. Like, no one's having fun. I feel like I was like deathly afraid of getting pregnant at prom. I feel like I thought as a teenager, like I didn't because like I understood basic science and I knew that other people got knocked up in like other situations. But I was like, prom is where girls go to get pregnant.
Yeah. It's a result of happy prom.
Happy prom, here's the baby.
Never get to forget your shitty high school boyfriend.
God. So like it was always like that. We talk like instead of just being like, this is how we are helping these girls out. Or like, hey, she's got a part-time job and she's going to school and there's a baby that's eating chicken nuggets. It was just like always like,
yeah, you made your bed. You need it. Now lie in it. How dare you ask for help?
What a hard time they're having. And it's like, what if they're thriving? We wouldn't like it if they were. But I mean, one of them that I used to hang out with, like her mom was very like financially helpful and like, and I think that's like why we could still chill and whatever, because like, you know, it wasn't like she was going to be like, well, it's either like diapers or Fazoli's. So I guess it's diapers, like, you know, the other places I hung out with in high school because we're broke. Well, I guess we're taking our McDonald's money to Fazoli's. We used to also eat for free a lot at the McDonald's that we worked at. So, beautiful times at Richmond High. Yeah. But it was just like that cloud of like, oh, look at them.
Yeah.
You're not doing great. I'm like, she's smiling. that baby is clothed and fed.
People used to say that a lot to me, like, your life is going to change and you don't even know how. Like, you don't even know. How is my life going to change? Because I'm 20. I've just been living my best life, reading books, hanging out with my friends. Like, I literally have no comparison.
Yeah.
Fast forward to 10 years later when all of my friends had kids when you're supposed to. And, like, their lives changed dramatically, too.
Yeah.
But, like, they've had life experience, they've had careers, you know, they had to make decisions like, well, which one of us is going to be the one that stays home or whatever. Like, none of that was my story. It was like, oh shit, I have no employable skills. I have some money. What now?
It'll just be
I wasn't even employed. I went crawling back to my deli counter job and was like, can I have a job back? And they're like, we haven't hired anybody else, so sure, you're not moving? I was like, no, I'm not moving. Didn't tell them I was pregnant.
Yeah.
No, the move didn't work out.
And then, like, back to the media, it's like, Juno wasn't having a great time in that movie.
Mm-mm.
Saved, we just wore really baggy sweatshirts until a
Mm-hmm.
water broke.
Yeah.
I'll- I find
Yeah.
I find it hilarious the hiding the pregnancy in a Christian school ploy where it's like no one would even fathom that you're pregnant. Not here where Jesus hangs out in the halls.
I mean, they had a person selling purity rings out in the fucking hallway.
I hate that. We
Yeah.
will have to unpack that later. Let's talk about society and misogyny.
Oh,
How
okay.
does the system fuck you over if you are a young woman who finds herself pregnant without the support of the idiot who impregnated you?
There's a lot of preconceived notions of like, well, you're not going to be able to work here. How are you going to make it work? Like, that was a big one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are you going to do this? What do you mean? How am I going to do this? I'm going to come to work. I'm going to work and then I'm going to leave.
Yeah. Also,
Um,
I thought we made those questions illegal.
Yeah, technically, right? But there's
Yeah.
ways around it.
Yeah.
There's ways around it. And I don't exactly live in a city that understands what certain like the state and federal laws that they need
Yeah.
to follow
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. Um and so just that structure of assumption before you even get started was really hard. And then two, like we still operate on a system where there's going to be somebody at home raising your child. So there
Mm-hmm.
is no understanding for you if something should happen.
Correct.
I spent years in the jobs that I did get paid time off or sick leave. All of that time was used for doctor's appointments, for when my kid was sick, when I had jobs that didn't have those things. It was like, well, you've missed a lot of work, Julia. No, oh my God. I worked for the electric company.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, my son was 3. He had had a fever of 103 or 104. It was really high. So I called in and I said, "Hey, my son has a fever." And my dad was the babysitter because my
Mm-hmm.
dad had retired in March of '04 and my son was born later in the year.
Yeah.
And my father was very much like, "Yeah, I'll babysit." And my mother was like, "We already raised our children." So that was a dynamic in itself.
Dicey.
Mm-hmm. So he's never had a fever this high before. Super chill baby, like sleeping through the night at 6 weeks, unheard of. Like took to everything. Like he was hitting all the things. He was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, why does this child like you have 103 fever? Like I'm staying home. Like he's literally begging me to stay home. Also, 103 fevers can be very damaging if not treated right.
Correct.
So I call in and I said, I'm coming. My son has a fever. Da da da. Get the fever to break, run it past my dad. Are you cool if I go back to work tomorrow? And he's like, yeah, we're good. Blah. I go into work the next day. My manager, a woman who has 6 children, Julia, you really need to consider what kind of role, because I was a temp at the time,
Mm-hmm.
your commitment level to this company.
As a temp, I have no commitment level. I'm a temp.
Because
It's
they're
the literal
dangling, because
definition of my job.
they're dangling that we're going to have full-time positions
Oh, yeah.
posted. And wouldn't it be nice if we could just roll you into that position? That's what they're dangling. And when she said that to me, so you're basically telling me that I have to choose my fucking job over my ill child.
Mm-hmm.
You, a woman
Mm-hmm.
with 6 kids.
A
After that,
secret
it's like
agent of the patriarchy.
100%. After that, it's like, fuck this job. And I like worked out my contract and then went somewhere else. I shit you not. A week later, I go to lunch. I get a flat tire in the parking lot. Excuse me. I call and say, "Hey, I have a flat tire in the parking lot. AAA's on its way. I don't know when I'll be here." No problem. No big deal. I get back, not a word. She doesn't say one single word. So a flat tire on my lunch break is more acceptable because I've given you a half of a day
Yeah.
with the promise of I'm probably coming back. But my ill child who could be hospitalized because the fever doesn't get treated properly.
Yeah, it's how the girl went deaf on at Switched at Birth, a wonderful ABC family show that I was obsessed with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was constantly sick as a kid, and my mom couldn't always tell because I don't respond in the way that you
Mhm.
would when one is sick. Like, I don't tell you my stomach hurts. I don't tell you my ears hurt. Like, I had multiple diseases at one time, and my mother took me to the doctor for a regular checkup, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, she's got pink eye and this and that and the not pink eye because you would see that obviously,
Yeah.
but like she's got bronchitis and an ear infection and she has pneumonia." And my mom's like, "What?" She's never complained once. So I'm operating on the fact that I don't know when I'm sick half the time. So my 3-year-old clearly can't articulate if there's anything else wrong.
Mhm.
Right? So it was just like, fuck you. Fuck
Well,
you and your like, we need to talk about your commitment level to this goddamn company who's ripping people off anyway.
here's what I can't stand about sick leave. Sick leave and having to take a day implies that I got or my child got a fever on purpose.
Right.
It's like fevers happen.
Uh-huh.
Pneumonia happens. We have an entire season dedicated to the flu. I went to the Columbus Zoo today and none of the exotic birds could go out because they were fucking worried about avian
Yeah.
flu, the
Yeah.
bird flu. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what? Valid. The flamingos don't have to entertain me if they have the flu or if we're
Yeah.
even worried about the flu. Like,
Yeah.
and so when it comes to like sick leave, and especially with parents, because number one, God, could you imagine if we gave parents more sick leave than people who aren't parents? And then people would have to be like, so I have to have a baby for people to care if I'm sick or not? Oh my God, that would, like, there's no solution except for the solution is people get to take off when they have a fever.
Yes, the solution is we just need to be better at caring for our community.
Yeah.
Because what that boss just did was made me feel like I can't work for you and be a single, because the other side of that single parent coin, I was very lucky. My dad was 100% into it. He was into being a
Mm-hmm.
grandpa. He was there for it. He was like, "What do you need?" It got to the point where it's just like, "Dad, let me pick him up today. Like, I
Yeah.
would like to pick my child up from school today." Which at the time I was cranky about, but in hindsight, I get it because he missed so much when we were kids because he was working all the time. He was working
Mm-hmm.
graveyard shift. Like, we saw him on Sunday because of his work schedule. Um, and it was just this, like, it was the delicate balance of utilizing the resources as well, right? Because I'm not going to ask my parents to babysit all the time because then they're going to make me feel guilty
Right. There's an
and make me
emotional
feel there's
cost.
their emotional tax isn't worth it. The other grandparents are also super involved and they would, they were all about it whenever they could. But that grandfather was in a band. So it was like, he's playing music gigs almost
Yeah.
every weekend and all this stuff. So it's like you have to be mindful too when you ask for help because you don't want to overwhelm the support you have because they make you feel bad for needing support.
Correct. And here's the thing, too. When we create a system in jobs with the government, any of it where if you're a if you're not a single parent, if you're just a woman in a bad marriage, but you also happen to have 2 kids, then you weigh that against yourself and it's like, well, I could toughen up and
Mm-hmm.
cook dinner earlier so he doesn't hit me. Or I could divorce him knowing that no one's going to hire me.
Yeah.
Or I have to make my own money now and I'm dependent on his money because I haven't been working. Or I have no current skills because I was the one staying home with the kids. Like, we create these structures thinking that, like, well, everyone has to work. We have to be doing something. And it's like, well, people are doing something and you don't pay them for everything that we're doing.
Right. This whole expectation of like you need to work harder and smarter and exceed and excel, but we're not going to pay you anymore. But we might pay you more at your 1 year because you've done such a good job exceeding our expectations. No, bitch, that job description is what you get. You want me
Mm-hmm.
to do more, then you pay for it. Because when I was freelancing, people paid for it. This
And
was
I,
not you get an unlimited amount of edits because no, I'm not your employee. You've contracted me. Here's what you get. And that doesn't translate into the employee world. And it really fucking should.
it should. And the thing of it is, too, is like, So the whole reason we have sick leave is because, well, if we just did away with sick leave and let people just be sick when they're sick and stay home, what about the people who are going to abuse it? And I'm like,
It's so dumb.
so here's the thing. My child has a 103-degree fever, could go deaf, could go catatonic, could do all of the things that I've seen on Grey's Anatomy and ER. I don't know. I'm 20. Like,
Yeah.
he could do any of it. Or I'm a woman in a bad marriage, knowing that if I become a single mom, there is no set in stone aid for me, and I'm still dependent on this abusive motherfucker. Because at the end of the day, we care that Chipotle has enough burritos on the stand than we do if kids are going deaf, or if people are spreading COVID or bird flu or monkeypox or any of it.
Yeah. Yeah, truly. And again, it's, structured in that system that the man leaves home, woman stays home, and that's just not where we are anymore. And
No.
we haven't been there in a long, long time. And this hesitation to catch up isn't coming from women who
No.
are in those positions. They're leading the charge to make the change.
Yeah. And thank goodness it's happening because number one, like, and I don't knock anyone who stays home with their children because my God, we don't make it like cheap to be a
No.
2-parent household with both those parents working, but that kid has to go into a $100 trillion a month daycare and then hope that they don't get like lice or bed bugs or the flu or any of it or pink eye while they're at the daycare.
It's interesting too, because in the 20 years, because again, all of my friends had kids in their 30s, right? So that could be a whole separate conversation. The difference between being the only one with a kid going to being the one with a teenager and everyone having little kids. Like, you didn't just raise a little kid, but whatever. What's interesting about that 10 years is within that 10 years, when I had my son, it was still easy to be a single income home.
Yeah.
With somebody staying at home. Fast forward 10 to 12 years later, and it was barely easy. And the decision was, well, mom, I'll stay home with the kids and then I'll go back to work in 5 years. And now I had a friend who had a baby in 2022. They literally can't afford for them to not both work. They also don't have a support system. Like, the daycare got shut down because the daycare had to shut down for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So my friend had to leave work. And so, and now they're
because you can't afford to work. That's how my friends always explain it to me. They go, I can't afford to work until these kids are in school.
Right. Because then the school becomes the quote free daycare. And it was easier, I think, 10 years ago to stay home for 5 years and then go back to work. And then now it's just unrealistic. Gas prices are insane. Groceries are insane. Cost of everything. Like, when I was in school, we didn't have, like, the internet was free at school. I mean, it's free at school, but the dependency on the internet isn't like, it wasn't like it is now. So, like, literally your child will fall behind if you don't have access to the internet at home.
Right.
Like, that wasn't a thing for me.
And also,
which is also fucking expensive.
Well, I had a point and
I'm sorry, I went on a tangent.
No, it left my fucking head. We were talking about too expensive. Oh. And the solution is for companies to take their billions from their one CEO and go, we're going to make a free daycare for our employees that we want to trap here for 14 hours a day for productivity. But they won't do it because, and that's what infuriates me so much about this country is I was told over the weekend that women really need to think long and hard about the choice of having a child if they also want to work, because daycare is so expensive and it's not a broken system. People are just making bad choices. And I was like, God. I hate to break it to you, but Roe v. Wade got overturned. Like, we don't have a choice anymore. We're just baby factories at this point.
Yeah, or like in my situation, the birth control I was on was recalled 5 years later because it actually resulted in lots and lots of like 5 kids in my kids' kindergarten class. All of us moms were on this one particular
Yeah.
line that got recalled because it turns out it didn't actually prevent pregnancy. Because there's like a statistic, right? It's like, oh, it's
Yeah.
80% effective. This shit was not 80% effective, it turns out.
No.
Effective at all. So there was 5 kids running around kindergarten who all shouldn't have been here because we took the precautions.
Mm-hmm. So we all want people to be baby machines because if you have a baby machine, then you have to buy onesies and cribs and all of the other bullshit that comes with the privilege of parenting. We're going to talk about the privilege of parenting and what it's like for you to have to watch people be privileged in parenting.
Mm-hmm.
But then at no point will someone in a big white house or sitting at one of the really big judge tables will vote, well, if we're going to make these women have babies, can we at least make it cheaper on them?
Mm-hmm.
So their entire life doesn't have to change. Can we put some money into our daycares and our Title I schools?
Mm-hmm.
Can we make preschool mandatory again so kids are going to kindergarten? Like, and then the preschools are nice.
Isn't that an interesting pendulum swing, though? My mom's generation, kindergarten wasn't even required.
No, I think I went
and then it was for us.
Yeah.
And then now I think California, I think our governor didn't sign the bill to make kindergarten mandatory.
But I went to half-day kindergarten because my sister was in preschool because we're only 17 months apart, and preschool is usually only half-day if you're in a preschool and not a daycare. So my mom went, and I was so pissed because in the morning is when you do the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s, and the calendar bullshit. But after nap time, I knew all of those assholes got to play kitchen and dress up and all of the centers that I just got to look at all day long. And my mom was like, we have toys at home.
No, it's not the same.
Right. You have the Fisher Price. Like, play with your cousins.
Yeah.
But you're still pissed because you don't know. You're like, all those bitches are going to touch those things that I'm never going to get to touch.
Yeah.
So I went to half-day kindergarten. Now, granted, it was a Catholic school kindergarten. So who the fuck even knows if they were following a law? But I went to half-day kindergarten. And let me tell you something as someone who has taught modern-day kindergarten. Modern-day kindergarten is like second grade for us. Those bitches have to be reading independently, gotta be able to spell all their color words, have to be able to see those color words on site and read their own fucking math worksheets.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, because you had a modern-day kindergartner.
And I was actually kind of petrified by the public school system because, as you know, I am not neurotypical. And his dad has probably, I'm convinced his dad has an undiagnosed learning disability. And so I was like, you will not go to a traditional school because they will punish you for being a wiry boy.
Yeah.
And acting out in class, and they will have to stay to the state standard. We will find a charter school so that way when you are a wiry boy, and the school I sent him to did movement breaks. So it was like whenever he would get out of hand, it's like go run a lap, and he'd come back and he'd be focused. Right. That wasn't going to happen at our neighborhood school. I wish it could.
You know who loved a movement break was Miss Katona. Miss Katona loved the fucking shit out of Go Noodle. Do you think I could get them to sponsor this podcast and be like, listen, I will lead all of the teachers to the Bible that is Go Noodle? Because they would do like bootleg Just Dance videos and yoga and like and like games that they would have to do with their body. Yeah. And then I'd be like, let's get wild for 3 minutes.
Yeah. And it totally works.
Yeah, because by the time I was teaching 4th grade, we decided that kids over the age of 7 didn't need recess anymore.
Oh, that breaks my heart.
And that lunch was like 20 minutes. And I was like, I can't eat a snack in 20 minutes.
Well, the adult version of that is you get a 30-minute break.
Right. And here's the thing, like, no wonder. Now we're into one of the topics that I haven't gotten to talk about yet on this podcast, but I talked about on Paige's podcast about how much I hate modern education. Yeah. And I would homeschool. should I fall pregnant by osmosis because I'm not having sex with a man until they give me back my abortion rights?
You're going to be Virgin Mary.
Ugh. Probably with my Christmas birthday. You know what? I was always fucking afraid I would end up the Virgin Mary because of my goddamn Christmas birthday and because my great aunts always told me that I was fucking touched by an angel because I had psychic visions as a kid. God. And I was like, I'm gonna wake up and some fucking angel is gonna put a baby in me.
Right.
Just like that poor girl Mary.
Poor Mary.
Poor Mary.
She didn't want it.
She didn't want a baby.
Poor Joseph, too.
Poor Joseph.
Raising somebody else's baby and he didn't even...
Or raising his baby and they had to concoct this story about an angel.
Yeah. Or that. Yeah.
Could you imagine saying that you were given a baby by an angel today? Not even the Catholics would believe you.
Oh, that is a first-class ticket being held against your will.
Yeah. But anyways, I think that a lot of my binging issues and a lot of kids' stomach and anxiety issues come from the way that we force people to eat.
Oh, yeah, because, again, throwback to when we talked about how Italian my mother was. We don't sit around like that culture in the watered down American version that I know. Mm-hmm. You sit, you enjoy each other's company. Also, you don't break bread with people you don't like. That's a good one.
I don't think Croatians do that either.
Yeah. But it's an event.
Yeah.
It is, we go to dinner at my mom's house, you're going to be there for hours.
Listen.
Because we're going to be around cooking things and test and then sit around the table and it's, manja, we eat. Like it's not a shove, open your mouth, open the hole in your face, shove food in it and then go back to work. Like that does not exist. Europeans do it right. I don't know what is up
with the naps and everything.
I don't know why we can't understand. Like, and people get so weird. Like, if I get invited to stuff where it's like, oh, we're gonna have dinner first, and then we're gonna do this thing, and I'm like, well, I don't like half the people that you want to have dinner at dinner, and like, it is very important in what I understand my culture to be on that side, that you break bread with people you enjoy,
that you only love,
and now you're asking me to break bread with people I don't enjoy. So I'm just going to sit here and drink my water.
I love this Italian pettiness of like mafia breaking bread with only the other mafia that they enjoy.
I would be curious actually to know about like other people's Italian culture experience because like I said, I'm such a watered down.
Where Hot Mom and her siblings grew up with my grandma and grandpa, it was called Little Italy. So I bet you there were a lot of Italian families, and I bet you all of the Croatian traditions that I've made up in my head as a child who was around her great aunts are probably Italian. Because I went and saw, not that these people are Italian, but I went and saw In the Heights, and I was like, why does this whole fucking movie feel like Thanksgiving at my aunt's house?
When my Big Fat Greek Wedding came out, my mom was like, that's my family. Like, that's how we were. And I was like, yeah, because we're like, when you're not white, you can identify with these non-white stories because it's especially when you're coming from like regions of Europe, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, so every joke that happens in my Big Fat Greek Wedding on the Greek side, like any like, oh, I have a mole that's actually my twin. It's my twin that I ate in the womb.
Yeah.
Everything. The Windex, all of it. My family. We went and we were like, I don't know if we should laugh or cry because I think we're owed money. Like, I think someone's been following us fucking around and then made a movie. Like,
right. Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about the fact that you had kids, 10 years. The one child. He's a good child.
He might not think he's perfect, but he's perfect in my eyes.
He's
no pressure. Like that's not a pressure thing. Like I understand some people feel like, well, my parents want me to be perfect. I don't want you to be perfect. You're perfect for me.
No, we just like literally love you. So sorry. Sorry. I'm gonna personally send this episode to his Instagram that we're not allowed to follow. I'm gonna send it to him. Just be like, hey, Auntie Natalie here again. Just wondering if your third roommate ever showed up. Just want some gossip. Just want some gossip. You want to come to book club?
My mom is psycho. He'll be like, this is why I'm in therapy.
Number one, how many times has your son had to sit in the car listening to you talk to me and then me send you back a message and then you be like, hold on, I gotta answer this. We're not having a phone conversation, which is what we had to listen to our moms, aunts, and grandmothers do. We're just sending 1 minute long messages back and forth. It is probably so triggering for kids that have to be around us.
Right.
To be like,
because now they hear both sides, whereas we just heard our mom's side.
Right. Which we're just like, oh God, like I think I know what Aunt Melissa's pissed about. I bet you I could guess, but I don't really know. Should I be texting my cousin? I don't know. But you had a kid 10 years before your friends did. Mm-hmm. And now your peers are raising children in what I think is the worst time to be a person who doesn't want to give a fuck about the performance that is parenthood. And it's why I won't have kids, because I refuse to be in mommy groups and I refuse to do this fucking like Oscar worthy performance that is banners for back to school, fucking balloon arches if the kid turned 4. We all turned 4. Yeah. Why does he get a balloon arch?
Right. Same people who complain about, participation trophies or
giving them just like
banners for turning 4.
The fucking stunting that is parenting now. And I get why people like fall into it, because we are also the Instagram generation that is raising kids now. So our entire life was on Facebook. Yeah. And so now we have to continue to stunt for the algorithm.
Yeah. 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 It is really hard because when hi everyone, I'm pregnant. Everyone's drunk college kids. Like nobody's got shit. So like my baby shower, bless the hearts of the friends who did put it together for us, but it was a lot of like clothes and diapers and clothes and diapers. And my mom's friends graciously, I say that loosely, hosted a baby shower, and that's where I got essentials like a bed or crib and like the bouncy thing and like I don't know, whatever the fuck you need anymore, because it's so different now. Like it's like a whole different set of stuff. But then it's like with the birthday parties, even I don't remember my child having attended any extravagant child's birthday party. It was like, hey, show 1 o'clock, Chuck E. Cheese, 1 o'clock, our backyard kind of shit. Yeah. And even the wealthy families, that's how they did it. Maybe they had better snacks. Maybe they had a bigger cake. Maybe they had more, balloon. But it was just
they had Coke and not RC Cola. That was the only difference.
Yeah. So like there was like little things like that. But now when I go, and it's hard. It is really hard sometimes to listen to my friends. I don't want to say complain, because that's not the lament about how parenting is now. Because I'm like, you're doing it to yourself.
Right. Because I very much believe, because I believe that that's true, because at any point we could all go back to having backyard birthday parties.
And I feel like there's a point too on the other side of that coin where it's like you feel like you have to keep up with the Joneses. But honestly, your child, you can create magic for your children without literally bringing Disneyland home.
Correct.
I feel like I did that with the means that I had. And so there are things that are always special to my child. Yeah. And he even commented about that when we were kind of doing the, farewell tour before he went off to college. There was a handful of things where he's like, these are the things that I really want to do. And, of course I cried, because then that means that me feeling like a failure for not having money raising him and having to work a billion jobs, and then also choosing to volunteer at the school to make things happen, because the baseball program wasn't going to happen if somebody didn't step up, and no one wanted to step up. And I was like, sure, fine, I'll do it. So these 50 kids can play baseball because none of you all want to do it. Whatever. Did that for 2 years and then had to leave. But it's like, he had one sport or one activity a season, not something every single day. Yeah. Not only because I couldn't afford it, I couldn't even afford the one activity. I had to barter. I bartered a lot, actually. Like, oh, you need a scorekeeper for the tournament? And then, we'll knock $50 off your registration fee. So I did as many games as I could to knock $50, and got it almost as free as I could. Um, but like people, I don't understand. And my mom was the same way. And I guess my mom was always big on you get one activity.
Mm-hmm.
There's 3 of you. And I just assumed because there's 3 of us. And then when my child got old enough to do activities, is like, oh, I have to also survive.
Yeah.
And if you want me to actually function on Saturday, you get one activity.
Right. Well, and here's the thing too. I am this bitch where if you invite me to your child's birthday party, I'm going to only advocate for your fucking child and not for the Oscar extravaganza red fucking carpet event that you want to have, because I see kids get so stressed out during the extravagance that I'm like, this is fucking overwhelming. Your kid is 4.
Yeah.
I have sat through people like literally like ironclad holding their kid down, making them open presents in front of 52 people.
No.
They want to play with that second fucking present that they opened, or they've called the 4th gift dumb or something. And I'm like, you brought that on yourself. You're making him open all these gifts in front of these people because one person will get pissed if they don't see the light in their eyes after they open it. And that says more about them than it does about the 4-year-old.
Or they say, please don't bring our child a gift. Make a donate. Bring things that we can donate.
What?
And I'm like,
To
okay,
me?
that's cool. That's cool. But also, like, we don't have a culture where we understand that, like, we perpetuate birthdays mean gifts, birthdays mean me, birthdays mean party. And so I respect that you want your child to learn and understand how to be giving. I don't know if this is the right way to do it.
No.
I don't know what the right way is. But it just feels kind of shitty to be like, because where we grew up, there was a Jehovah's Witness church around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing that stuck out to me about them was that they don't celebrate birthdays.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, fuck that. And like, they'd come to the door all the time when we were kids. Oh, whatever their spiel was. And then when my sister was like, they don't celebrate birthdays. As I got older, I was like, you don't celebrate. I'm not doing this. You can stop coming here. Because in our house, birthdays are a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that they were a big deal was not this pageantry. It was like, mom made a special cake. Mom made your favorite meal. Invite your friends over. You want to go get it's still, all these things still felt special and still made it special to the point now that we're grown. My sister and I are always like, okay, here's what's happening. Birthday month. We're those people, birthday month. The people that people hate. The people that people love to hate.
Listen, there's nothing that stresses me out like my own fucking birthday, because I was born on Christmas.
Yeah, you have a different situation because everyone's celebrating your birthday because it's the birth of Christ. I mean, everyone who, acknowledges the birth of Christ in some way.
Well, and everyone is doing their own fucking bullshit anyways, because Christmas is so commercialized and ingrained into our very white society.
Yeah,
so, Christmas is just like white privilege wrapped in a bow.
Yeah, that's another element of single parenting.
Yeah. So then, so I plan my own birthday activity. Mm-hmm. And then I tell people that they don't have to come, and I'll go and have fun anyways. Like when I went and saw Whitney Cummings last year, I was like, listen, I'll be bummed if I go by myself, but I'm seeing Whitney for my birthday. Yeah. I've made fairy gardens. I try to support a small business or an artist that I like for my birthday.
Yeah.
So I've made fairy gardens. I'm like, all I want to do is go dancing. One time I did get like insane, and I was like, we're getting a hotel in Indy and I want to go to the Dueling Pianos bar because I'm fucking hot. They're like, okay. And I'm like, I can't help it that I'm hot and I deserve to be hot in a new city.
Yeah. It's hard though, because, or going back to the whole parenting and then my friends having kids 10 years later, because watching just the overt privilege happening.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that coin, it becomes this thing of like, well, it's different for you. And I can't believe, how could you do this? And how I am so impressed with how you could do all these things and all this stuff. And then they talk to me like I didn't just raise a kid by myself, beg, borrow, and questionable whether or not it was stealing to make it work.
Well, and I love when someone will look at your set of circumstances and go, "Wow, I just couldn't imagine being you." Okay, well, vote better.
Yeah, and then they do it in a way where it's like they're impressed, right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
so impressed by your will and your strength. I actually had a really good conversation with a friend a little over a year ago now. She had some major life events happen around the same time that everyone sort of started dropping off from my life. Um, and we had a really candid conversation, and she was like, I didn't realize how hard it was for you.
Hmm.
I'm seeing my sister now go through this. I mean, granted, her sister is in her 30s, but the scenario with this sort of, we don't know if this guy's going to be around is
Right.
still present. And she's like, I didn't realize how lonely you probably were. I didn't realize how hard it was. I didn't realize you still needed friends. I am so sorry I wasn't there for you. She's the only person who has acknowledged the truth of what really it feels like. And I told her, I said, because I know what was going on in her life at the time, is like, had that not happened, I'm convinced that you would have still been a huge part of my life,
Yeah.
because she had this huge life event that took her out of town. And honestly, there's no other way that that needed to be handled other than her leaving. She needed to remove herself from the situation. But the fact that she came back, 16 years later or 15 years later and was like, I didn't realize that you were lonely. I didn't realize that you needed friends still. I didn't realize that you were sitting at home by yourself so often. And I'm sorry for that. And I was just like, God, I would love to hear that from everybody I knew from the age of
Yeah.
21 until now.
Correct. Well, because I'm bad about that too. With Stephanie, who's been on the podcast a couple of times, like when she had the twins, and I still get like that sometimes where I look at the clock and I'm like, is it a good time to talk to her? Because I know when her kids get home from school.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, if I'm not talking to her, then who is talking to her? Because I also know what her husband works. And
Yeah.
like, so it's one of those things where like, I feel like we're all so like dunked with shame that it's like, well,
Mhm.
I didn't want to be a bother. I didn't want to call you while you were doing your important mommy and me things. And
Well,
like,
and then putting the onus on the mom. Well, you call me if you need anything. No,
right.
bitch, I'm not going to call you if
That's
I need anything. My anxiety level is high. I'm worried. I don't know what your life is because we don't talk anymore. Like, you think
mhm,
and then in the handful of people where I would text and be like, "Hey, I'm just thinking about you," blah blah, and no real responses, And I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird scenario where it's like we feel like we can't impose on other people's lives.
right.
So I've taken that experience and I was in a group. I was in a writers group one time, and I kind of my son was older, becoming more independent, and I had commented as like, my best friend has a little, and it's so hard, and like I feel really lonely, and like I don't really have any friends who have kids my age, like similarly aged, so I'm going through this alone, and da da da. I got fucking chewed out by every single mom for not doing more for my friend with littles.
Oh, that's right. The little's privilege.
And I was like, okay, but I literally was alone the entire time my child from like 0 to 10. So don't come at me with that. But I was not in a place to be able to defend myself in that because
Right.
I was still, and it was just like, fuck you. I
Well,
literally had my parents for support and that was it. Do you have any idea how hard it is to have boomers who have been married for all of their lives who don't understand why it's so hard for you to get your shit together? Be your support system? I mean, I'm not mad. I'm grateful that they were there because that could
right.
have been 1,000 times worse without him. But it's like, I have no peer support. I have no peers.
Well, and part of me too is like, do we not realize that kids are work and a like fucking responsibility whether or not they're 14?
Yeah. And I've got questions like, how do I navigate teenagehood with a male child when I've never been a male?
Right.
I've
Also
got
that.
I don't have anyone to because again, it's not my parents' responsibility to parent my child with me. So I don't think we are not fundamentally the same when it comes to raising children. So the
Mhm.
things that I would want to talk about, they're not the right people for that. So I literally have no one. So then my best friend, would come into play about that. And so I now take my experience from my 20s and I will reach out to my friends with littles and be like, hey, I'm just thinking about you. Love you. Like,
Yeah.
take a look at your calendar, shoot me some dates. Here are some dates that I'm free kind of shit. But again, I'm the one I'm still lonely. I'm still alone. I'm still the only person I know who's going through empty nesting at this phase of life. So much
Well,
fun.
well, my nest has always been empty. It's just me and Penelope
Oh,
doing
Penelope.
our hot girl shit.
Oh, we love Penelope.
But yeah, it's just like, it's a trip. And it's one of those things where it's like, again, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
100%.
And we also like fuck systematically. We also like culturally
Mm-hmm.
don't make any type of motherhood easy. Because then if you are a partnered mother and then you're like, oh, I don't know, it was just like really hard. Then people are screaming at you that you didn't train your partner well enough.
Right.
You
I
didn't
will
teach them how to change a diaper.
I will say I do have a quibble with partnered parents saying I'm basically a single mom,
Mm-hmm.
because the difference is whether or not he gives you money, you still have somebody paying for a roof over your head,
Yeah.
whereas I am the person paying for the roof over my head. So I don't have a backup
Yeah.
plan. Like, I don't have a second person, a second adult in the home to carry some of the burdens. So like, I understand, like, I'm not discrediting that. I'm just saying, like, I understand, like, mothers are heavily burdened with child rearing.
Mm-hmm.
I was also heavily burdened with child rearing and being the sole provider. So it's different.
Yeah.
And it's like, just say you're a solo parent
Yeah.
then, because you still have food in the house. You don't have to worry about, I mean, maybe they do. I don't know. Right. Like, my parents were weird, not weird about money, but like my dad gave my mom an allowance, right?
Right.
Like, for all the things for us. But she still had somebody giving her money. She still had somebody else paying her mortgage. She still had somebody paying her car insurance, and she bore the whole brunt of child rearing. I had to pay for everything plus raise a child. So it's
Right.
different. So I would like for people to stop saying I'm basically a
Okay.
single parent when your partner is not heavily involved. So
Right.
you're a solo parent.
Yeah. Or a caregiver, a solo caregiver.
Yeah.
Because, like, I do see a lot of that. As you know, it's one of the reasons why I won't have children with a man.
Yeah.
And I'm not letting men ejaculate inside of me until we get Roe versus Wade back. And this is my platform. And legislators, you heard me. And there it is.
There it is.
But it's because I see a lot of the women in my life, and I'm like, okay, what a privilege. You work, he works, you bathe those kids, you feed those kids, you know those kids' teachers' birthdays, mothers' names, all of it. And he works. And then he makes you feel bad because he works. It's a lovely cycle that I just get to see play out over and over again in the people that I love's lives. All right. What's your biggest takeaway because you've been that's the reason we've been doing this episode and we've had it planned. You've been doing a lot of reflecting on what it meant to be a mother because now you have the time.
Mm-hmm.
You had to adjust
I'm no longer in a scarcity mindset.
You're not in a scarcity mindset. And this whole summer we were like gaining ground. We were crying. We were just sad. We were clutching our pets, and we were making lists of people that we no longer enjoyed, and
crying over the prospect of being alone.
And we were, watching One Tree Hill,
no longer needing to be an everyday parent. What do these things even mean?
Right. And so you've had time to actually sit and be like, what was parenthood to me? Which I think is something that not enough women do.
Yeah.
Single mothers or not, I don't think that when your children leave your home, I don't think enough grown people sit back and go, what did parenthood do to me?
Yeah, that's a great question because I was so young. I mean, I was pretty solid in who I was. Like, I knew what kind of career I wanted. I had a pretty solid belief. Well, my belief system has changed over time. But my social justice-ness was
Yeah.
always there, right? And now I think that I have I have a lot of regret. I'm in the face
Hmm.
of regret right now
Yeah.
because there's so many things, especially because I'm seeing so much reflected in my peers, in my
Right.
friends, because they are financially stable. They do have solid careers. I didn't have any of those things when I became a parent. So I have a lot of regret right now. But one of the things I don't regret, because people are always like, you can't be friends with your kids. I agree with that. I I
You can be
don't
friendly to your
I was going to
children.
say, I don't regret being friendly and creating, new traditions that mean something to me and sort of being a little bit less intense. I grew up in a very intense home and I started out that way. And then eventually I realized that's not my parenting style
Right.
and moved away from that. But I do regret um, not being a little bit more developed as a human before creating a human. With that said, because we've always had a very open dialogue, conversations all the time, and you and
Hmm.
I have talked about this. I talked to that kid about almost everything, like with few exceptions. Like I'm not gonna give him details about my dating life. Um, we've been very open about like I've told him openly like I'm very he is my favorite person.
Yeah.
I really enjoy who he's turned out to be, and I don't think he would be who he is. I think he might actually be, I don't want to make that speculation.
Oh yeah,
It
we don't
was
have to put anything on a mic.
I think that now I don't regret doing it in terms of being single
Yeah.
and solo, because I think that the influence from his father wouldn't have been positive because he was also going through his own development journey. And I think that there would have been way more long-term harder to reverse ramifications from that. I
Well, and you had to send him to school. So like at least you removed one like not great influence from his life. I say often, I'm like, ooh, nothing can ruin a kid that you think that you did a great job on, like school, because they meet one bitchy kid that's a
yeah,
little sassier, and then they're
yeah.
like, that person should be my hero.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've always had really open conversations about like quality over quantity when it comes to friendships.
Yeah.
Um and I just really love who he turned out. I really honestly don't think that I could have been partnered at 20 through
Hmm.
30 raising him.
No.
Nowadays, I would like to know what it's like to be partnered raising somebody who actually wants to have children with me and actually wants a child and be an active role in that child's life,
Hmm.
which is a huge ask because that's not a thing that a lot of people want to openly talk about. Controversial opinion. If somebody had just given him permission to say, I don't want to do this, I would have been like, cool, you can walk away. I will ask of nothing of you. And
Yeah.
that would have been okay. But we create a system where you got somebody pregnant, you must want, or you got pregnant, you got somebody pregnant, you must want this.
Yeah.
Whereas, and then that creates, um,
Resentment,
resentment and all
cycles
kinds of
of
things,
abuse.
cycles of abuse, where really it's just like, can we just say, like, hey, if you don't want to be a parent, that's cool.
Right. And
You have,
it goes both ways. Whether or
yeah,
not someone got you pregnant and you're
yeah,
like, if you want this, that's cool, but I'm going to birth it for you and then I'm going to bounce.
yeah.
Like,
And just let it, and it needs to be okay. But we don't allow for that to be okay. And I
right.
think that's a huge problem when it comes to single parenting as
Yeah.
well.
Um, as you know, my biggest lesson, as I watch the people in my life parent is that I don't want to.
Yeah. You know what I mean? But here's the thing though. So many people told me that. If people told me that now, oh, I don't want to be a parent. No big deal. Cool. You do you. But people told me that when I had a 2-year-old
Mm-hmm.
in this way. God, it's so hard for you. I don't ever want to do
Oh,
that.
yeah.
You're the reason why I don't want to have kids. The fuck?
I literally hope that every woman in my life knows that it is not because of the way that they parented or the way that their kids talk to them or the way that kids talk to me while I was nannying or teaching or whatever. It is literally like when I think about dedicating my life to a little gremlin of a me, and then I think of the list of things that means will stop.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, Natalie can't ever nail down a career. Now she's a podcaster. Like, and like, I'm not a stable person. Why would I be a stable home for a child? Or like, you know, getting my art career up and going, getting the podcast successful and lucrative. Like, there's nothing that can throw a wrench in my plans like a screaming infant. And I'm not saying that people don't do it. A lot of celebrities have written a lot of memoirs about how they breastfed on set. And good for Reese Witherspoon.
But the difference is they had support.
Yeah.
Right? Like you, I'm also an artist. And I had people say things that you can't do that. You need to get a real job. You have a child now.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had this conversation. Imagine what kind of creative career I would have had if I was allowed to lean into those tendencies, a path I was already on before having said child, and was just supported in that way, rather than spending 17 years trying to find a career or a job that fits and doesn't make me feel like shit, and I can actually like parent. Because if my job makes me feel like shit, I'm not going to want to be parent when I get home.
And then it's a cycle of abuse.
Yes. The best thing that happened to me was getting fired at 32, because then it became well, guess what? I actually really would rather spend time with my kid and do fun shit anyway.
Right. And so for me, it's like, if anything, when I watch the women in my life parent, it just allowed me to think critically about, like, you wouldn't like that.
Yeah.
There's no shame in not liking having to talk to someone like that, or having to spend 45 minutes being all like, you can't do that. And then having to gentle parent, where my parents got the privilege of just telling me no and to shut up about it.
And honestly, Natalie, that was kind of my version of parenting too, because it was like, because I said so was a lot. And then when he got old enough and was like, well, why? Not the 3-year-old, why? But like, you said because I said so, but I need a concrete reason, literal words out of my 5-year-old's mouth.
Yeah.
Then it turned into, here's why. At the end of the day, it's still my decision. I'm the parent.
Yeah.
You don't get to have this opportunity. We can have this conversation when you're a little bit older. And he respected it.
Yeah. Well,
and I kept my word. We had those he would call back, and we'd have those conversations.
Well, and do you know what I've noticed about how I am with kids now? I'm petty. Because like, I'm somehow like this person who like feels like kids get more privilege than I do, and therefore I have to like knock them down a peg to where it's like, I'll share with you if it's on my terms, but if you ask for more than I was willing to give, now you get nothing.
Yeah.
Or now, even if I wasn't like, if I didn't care about giving you an extra piece of whatever I was eating or whatever, but you went to grab for it, now I'm just going to eat. I'm just going to binge on this food and make eye contact with you while I'm eating. Like, I'm fucking petty about kids. Kids I love, kids I've just met.
Yeah.
There's something about my scarcity complex and my like self-preservation where I'm just like, that kid's not getting fucking anything over on me. I'm smart. I'm 33.
Yeah.
And it's like, Natalie, you're acting like the 4-year-old.
But are you though? Because like, here's the other thing I've observed too. It's like they do this whole no, and then cave, right? It's it's like training. We had this conversation about training dogs. Were you there for that conversation?
I don't believe so.
And everyone's like, people just kind of get tired of the work. I'm like, it's the same with children.
It's the same with children.
You have to be firm in your boundaries, and it's really hard and it's tiring and exhausting. But guess what? That is a short-term loss for a long-term gain.
Correct. So like for whatever reason, and I
can't believe I just said raising children is comparable
to dogs. Some people should have gotten puppies. I will also backseat parent. Like if you've told a kid something, and because I'm so fucking petty and I watch that kid disrespect you and you're a person that I love, I go, hey, Aunt Natalie doesn't think that's great.
You know what? I do that too, but I see it as a sign of support and solidarity for
Yeah.
the mom because, you know, in my experience, the mom's not getting that kind of support from dad at home
Yeah.
or the other partner at home. So to me, it symbolizes mom's an authority and I
Mhm.
recognize that and I'm grown. So you should recognize it too.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
what that's what I think it
I
is.
am constantly parroting the mothers around me. Hey, she said to give that back.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's great because you're showing support.
And I don't like sugarcoat it like fun aunties do. I like to fucking go like full like grandma peg. And I'm like, I believe she said to fucking put it back. And the kids like look at me. And I'm like, where's my cigarette? Like, this is why every time I envision myself as an aunt, I'm chain smoking because kids bring out the peg in me. And I'm just like, where's my fucking cigarette?
Yeah.
And I knew that Peg loved us and she probably even fucking enjoyed us. But do you think I ever got told, put that back twice? No, because she was scary as hell.
Yeah. This episode is not sponsored by Virginia Slims.
Right. Don't smoke or do. I had a friend controversially tell me a couple of weeks ago, she goes, I just feel like people were calmer when we were all addicted to nicotine because people were A, getting nicotine and B, taking deep breaths and taking breaks. We tell people all the time.
Dead.
They're like, at our HR wellness trainings, we're like, take a smoke break without a cigarette. And they're like, we can do that. And we're like, yes, please step outside and take deep breaths as if you were about to smoke a cigarette.
Oh my God.
Because a deep breath can do you some good.
I go for a walk.
Yeah.
I'm like, I gotta stand up and go for a walk because I can't sit for 8 hours. That's been true my whole life.
What are you hoping for all of the mothers or the society when it comes to the mothers, or what are you hoping for? You know how to do the manifestation. This is your third time.
I really want us to shift society in a way that becomes more communal.
Oh my gosh, we have the same one.
Mm-hmm. So rather than it's you're every man for himself, which is not sustainable, as we've seen.
Yeah.
It goes back to community and having support and love and care because we're so much better for it when we do that.
Well, and do you know what? This is why mine is this, because I grew up as the oldest grandchild.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that I had this privilege of seeing a lot of people get raised on my mom's side of the family.
Yeah.
And Hot Mom will tell you this all the time that like she doesn't understand why some of my friends have like literally dropped babies out of their bodies and then like no one came to visit with a casserole or like came to do laundry or help with dishes or anything, and that they're just left to do it because my mom was like, but like, and part of it was location, right? Because my mom grew up near all of her dad's brothers, and they all had a bunch of kids, and some of those kids were older than my mom, some of those kids were younger than my mom, and then like some of those people had kids, like some of my mom's cousins had kids that were almost her age, like and my mom also became a sibling. I think my Uncle Greg and I are only 12 years apart. I'm not supposed to fucking use names on the show, but you know what, haven't even talked shit about him. So like we're 12 years apart. So like my mom also became a sibling to an infant at a very old age.
Yeah.
So like my mom and I got to see a lot of people be raised, and we got to see a lot of the biggest messes in our family fucking rally and like do meal trains and do drop-bys. Just be like, hey, I came over to hold the baby so you could have a shower.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. And I saw that with my mom's friends. I see that now as my peers are having children, but 18 years ago.
By the way, if you have a baby, I only have one meal that I know how to make mothers, and it's crock pot, tortellini, fettuccine alfredo. You're welcome. Shred
delicious.
People tell me all the time, they're like, it's fucking great, Natalie. I go, it's because I put a fucking entire, after it like cooks in the crock pot, and I put it in the pan, I put an entire bag of Kraft mozzarella cheese in it.
Mozzarella cheese is the best. Like, honestly, it makes everything so good.
I literally don't fucking measure cheese. I'm just like, what am I feeling? I'm feeling the entire fucking bag.
Yeah.
It's the only thing and like, so when we do meal trains and stuff, I'm always the bitch who's like, what do you want me to order you from DoorDash if I'm feeling overwhelmed? Or I know how to make my one pregnant friend fettuccine Alfredo. But I know that my grandma Peg will come and haunt me if I know that someone's pregnant and didn't get a nap that day.
Yeah, it's small support. A friend of mine, when she was pregnant, she was like, man, I really am craving a Blizzard, but we don't have the money and da-da-da. I Venmoed her $20. It's like, girl, go get you 3. A Blizzard. Like, go get you a Blizzard. Same friend is having a hard time too. And I'm like, okay, payday's this day, so I'm going to ship her some stuff. So that way, because I don't have the money right now, but when payday hits, I'm going to be like, I've built a list. I'm like, going to ship it to you when I get paid. But I'm not telling her because I don't want her to think it's in response to her being upset. I want her to feel loved.
Well, and you know what? I've stopped saying no to people when they're clearly trying to help. Like, I cried during a work meeting because our job was toxic. And my counterpart at that job, she texted me and she goes, what do you like in your coffee? Yeah. And I could have been like, no, it doesn't matter. I can toughen up or whatever. And I just went mocha and ice.
Honestly, that's another thing. That's a really great opportunity. And I wish more moms would have the ability. Again, that goes back to community where it's like, what do you need? Like with my best friend, I don't even ask her anymore. What can I do for you? It's like, hey, I'm coming over Friday. What's my task? Like when she's getting ready for her kid for a party or her kids. Like it's gotten to the point now where when because she does host some pretty awesome parties. Mm-hmm. The understanding is I show up early and I make the charcuterie board. Yeah. That is what I do. And then when it comes to her daughter's birthday stuff, it's literally like, because I know she's in the final hour, right? Like, I can come over at 8. When I get there, you tell me what to do. And it's not even can I come over at 8? It's like, bitch, I'm showing up. Whether you open the door or not, I'll figure out how to get in your house.
Tell people where they can find you.
Friends, if you've forgotten my name, I am Julia Washington. I am the host of Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous, where we analyze pop culture through the lens of race or gender and sometimes both. And Natalie tolerates me every week when we do our spin-off show called Still Comfy. You can find me on Instagram. I am the Julia Washington, THE Julia Washington musings. I don't know if anybody enjoys it. Some people act like they do. Oh, thank you, friend. Book reviews, talking about shit, talking about life, whatever. And the podcast, same name, on Instagram as well. I'm also on TikTok now. Washington. Lots of home reno stuff. By the time this airs, I hope to God it's all over.
Tolerators, you gotta follow Men I've Tolerated Pod on Instagram, or else you don't know anything. And I don't know how to hit this home with you more. You want to know stuff. I realize that I am it's the last day of September 2022, and I am fully releasing an episode that's coming out probably in February of 2023, which means if you weren't following the Instagram, you probably missed out on the snarky Christmas t-shirts I made about the patriarchy. Who wants to jingle bells when you could break glass ceilings? Oh my God, is that going to be one?
That should be one. That's it right there, friend.
Oh my gosh, you almost missed that. You're also going to want to follow me on Natalie K124 on Instagram and on TikTok, because why would I make a podcast when I could also sell you all shit? So you won't know when I go to the zoo or what Penelope is doing or any of the other unhinged things that I do on TikTok. Bracelets that I'm making, art that I'm making, unless you're following me on all of the things. Make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast, because then I get automatic downloads. That means when I check our numbers, I don't get sad. I don't know what this bit is. We've been here a very long time.
It's like we thought we were on Still Comfy or something.
Right. And remember, Team Tolerator, you have to smile through anything that you're fucking tolerating, including a system that will rip away our uterus autonomy, but then also make motherhood the literal toughest chore of our lives. Smiles are for joy. Hi, everyone. Thank you for checking out this week's episode. I wanted to jump on and offer a small reminder of the ways that you can connect with us. The first way is our socials. So we are Men I've Tolerated Pod on Instagram and Natalie K124 on TikTok, my personal Instagram. And you can find us on YouTube and Pinterest under To All the Men I've Tolerated Before. The second way is by becoming a Patreon member. We are well on our way to our 25 member Patreon, where we are going to unlock bonus perks to being a patron member. Shout out to all of our existing patrons. As an independently ran and funded podcast, your support means everything. Another way that you can connect with us is making sure to subscribe and leave comments wherever you can so we can start reading reviews on each podcast episode. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to check out the merch store, and we will see you next week.